At 65, he understood what truly matters in life. There's something that happens to most people around the age of 65. It's not just retirement or collecting Social Security or becoming eligible for Medicare. It's deeper than that. It's the moment when decades of working, striving, and chasing finally slow down enough for clarity to emerge. For many, it's only then, after spending 40 or 50 years in the race, that they finally understand what actually mattered all along. And what they discover often isn't what they expected. Welcome. Today I want to share with you the wisdom that comes from people who've reached that milestone, that moment of understanding at 65. I've spent time reading research, listening to interviews, and studying surveys of retirees who looked back on their lives and shared what they wish they'd known sooner. What emerges from their stories isn't just about money or health or family, though all of those things matter. It's about a fundamental shift in perspective that happens when you finally see your life from the other side of all that striving. The insights are profound, sometimes heartbreaking, but ultimately hopeful, because they contain lessons we can apply right now, no matter how old we are. Let's start with the most common regret that surfaces again and again in every study, every survey, every conversation with retirees. Not saving enough money. This isn't just a minor concern. Research from the Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies shows that 78% of retirees wish they had saved more. Think about that number. More than 3 out of every 4 people who've already retired look back and realize they didn't prepare adequately. In another survey, 70% said the single best advice they'd give their younger selves was to save or invest more and to start earlier. These aren't people who were financially reckless or irresponsible. These are everyday Americans who worked hard, paid their bills, maybe even felt like they were doing okay. But when they reached 65 and looked at what they had accumulated versus what they actually needed for the next 20 or 30 years of life, the gap was terrifying. The pain shows up in specific ways. There's the person who didn't take advantage of the employer match on their 401k, literally leaving free money on the table year after year. There's the person who kept meaning to increase their retirement contributions but never got around to it, so they stayed at 3% when they could have been saving 10 or 15%. There's the person who started saving in their 40s instead of their 20s, not realizing that those extra 2 decades of compound growth would have tripled or quadrupled their nest egg. A financial advisor named Carrie Sudan put it bluntly when she said too many people put off saving until the very end, only starting to think about retirement as they approach it, which leaves them with fewer options and greater stress. But here's what 65 teaches you. Money isn't everything, but not having enough money when you're old is a special kind of prison. You can't travel. You can't help your kids or grandkids. You can't afford the health care you need. You're constantly stressed about outliving your savings. Every purchase becomes a calculation. That's not freedom. That's survival. The second big realization that comes at 65 is about health. 2/3 of Americans 65 and older say they wish they'd taken their health more seriously when they were younger. When you're 30 or 40 or even 50, it's easy to believe you're invincible. You can eat whatever, skip exercise, ignore the doctor's advice about your cholesterol or blood pressure, and it doesn't seem to matter much because you still feel fine. But health is like a bank account. You make deposits through good habits, and you make withdrawals through bad ones. The problem is, when you're young, you don't see the balance dropping. It's only decades later when you're dealing with diabetes, heart disease, joint problems, chronic pain, or a cancer diagnosis that you realize all those withdrawals added up. The retirees who are healthiest at 65 aren't usually the ones who got lucky genetically, though that helps. They're the ones who made different choices years ago. They exercised regularly even when they didn't feel like it. They ate reasonably well most of the time. They managed their stress. They got regular checkups. They addressed problems early instead of ignoring them. And now, in their go-go years of retirement, they can actually go. They can hike, travel, play with grandchildren, pursue hobbies that require physical ability. But there's another group of retirees. These are people who spent their working years completely focused on career and finances, neglecting their bodies, and now they're physically limited. One man retired at 64, hoping to spend more time playing polo, his favorite hobby. 2 years later, he was injured so badly he couldn't play anymore. Now he regrets not retiring earlier when his body could have handled it. As someone once said, retirement typically has 3 periods. The go-go years when you're healthy and active, the slow-go years when you're slowing down but still functioning, and the no-go years when health problems severely limit what you can do. Nobody knows how long their go-go years will last. Some people stay active into their 80s, others start declining in their 60s. But what's clear is that by 65, you understand viscerally that your body has limits and time is running out to do the things that require physical capability. The third major insight that comes at 65 is about time itself. Many retirees say they wish they had retired earlier, and this regret might seem paradoxical. Why would you regret not retiring sooner when we just talked about needing to save more, which usually requires working longer? But here's what they mean. They don't regret working and saving. They regret working past the point when they actually had enough, sacrificing precious years of health and freedom out of fear or habit. Some people delay retirement because they genuinely need the money, but others delay it because they're scared to stop, scared to spend their savings, scared that somehow it won't be enough, even though the numbers clearly show it would be. One woman laughed and said she should have taken more holidays and fewer vitamins. What she meant was that she spent so much energy trying to extend her life that she forgot to actually live it while she had the chance. Research confirms this pattern. Workers often plan to retire around age 65, but many end up retiring earlier, with a median retirement age of 62. And that's not always voluntary. People get laid off, downsized, pushed out. Health problems emerge for them, or a family member requiring care. Over half of workers are forced into retirement sooner than they planned. That's a sobering statistic. It means if you're sitting there thinking you'll work until 67 to maximize your savings, there's a better than 50-50 chance something will disrupt that plan. The lesson isn't to be reckless, it's to be realistic. Save aggressively so you have options, but also recognize that waiting for some perfect moment to start enjoying your life is a trap. That perfect moment might never come, or you might not be healthy enough to enjoy it when it does. The fourth revelation at 65 concerns relationships. Retirees consistently say they regret not maintaining friendships, not spending more time with family, not prioritizing the people who mattered most. In the daily grind of working and raising kids and managing household logistics, friendships often fade. You keep meaning to call that old college buddy or former coworker, but months turn into years, and eventually you've lost touch completely. Then you retire, you have time, and suddenly you realize how isolated you are. Your kids are busy with their own lives. Your spouse, if you have one, might be the only person you interact with regularly. Those golden friendships you thought you'd always have are gone, and it's almost impossible to build deep new friendships at 65 or 70 the way you could when you were younger. Family relationships suffer too. Parents spend so many years working that they miss their children's youth. They're not at the soccer games or school plays. They're traveling for business or working late. They tell themselves it's for the family, they're providing financial security. And that's true. But at 65, when they look at their adult children and barely know them, when their children are closer to their friends than to their parents, the money they earned doesn't seem worth what they lost. Or there's the regret of not spending more time with aging parents. You were so busy with your own life that you didn't visit as often as you could have. Now they're gone, and you can't get that time back. Buddhist philosophy teaches about impermanence. the idea that everything changes, including pain and relationships. The people who seem to age best are those who understand this deeply. They've lost friends, spouses, youth, health, but they haven't lost the ability to see beauty in what remains. They've learned to be present with who and what they have now, rather than dwelling on what's gone. But they also universally advise younger people not to make the mistakes they made. Don't wait to nurture your relationships. Don't assume there will always be more time. Call your parents. Show up for your friends. Be present with your children while they're young. These aren't just nice ideas. They're the foundation of a life you won't regret. The fifth understanding that emerges at 65 is about living authentically. Person after person in their 70s and 80s says essentially the same thing. Don't live to impress people. Live to express who you really are. Because when you're 80, you finally see how little other people's opinions mattered. You realize the chances you missed, the quiet dreams you postponed, the moments of joy you could have had if you'd just stopped caring what others might think. One retired nurse said when she was younger, she thought courage meant doing something big, like saving lives or speaking to a crowd. Now she understands courage is quietly choosing yourself every single day. Living authentically doesn't mean being selfish or irresponsible. It means not spending your entire life performing a version of yourself that you think others want to see. It means not choosing careers, relationships, lifestyles based solely on external validation. It means having the guts to say, "This is who I am, this is what matters to me," and being at peace with that even if it disappoints others. Many retirees talk about spending too long accommodating others. They confused kindness with self-sacrifice. One man said he thought saying yes made him a good person, but it just made him exhausted. Kindness without boundaries isn't really kindness. It's fear disguised as generosity. By 65, you understand that being true to yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's the only way to live a life that feels like it actually belongs to you. But getting to that understanding often requires decades of people-pleasing, decades of quiet resentment, decades of wondering why you feel so empty despite doing everything right. The tragedy is that most people figure this out too late to apply it fully to their lives. But the gift is that we can learn from them and start living more authentically now. The sixth lesson is about experiences versus possessions. Retirees consistently wish they had spent more money on experiences, especially travel and time with loved ones, rather than accumulating stuff. Americans are really good at buying things. Big houses, new cars, the latest technology, expensive furniture, designer clothes, and in the moment, these purchases feel important. They signal success, they provide comfort, they're tangible proof that you've made it. But at 65, looking back, most of that stuff means very little. The house was too big and too much work. The car was just transportation. The clothes went out of style. What people remember, what brings them joy when they reflect on their lives, are experiences. The trip to Europe they took with their spouse. The summer they spent every weekend at the lake with their kids. The concerts, the meals with friends, the adventures, the moments of beauty and connection. These are what create a rich life. Research backs this up. When retirees think about their biggest regrets, many say they waited too long to enjoy life, waiting for retirement, waiting for the kids to be grown, waiting for the mortgage to be paid off. But by the time those milestones arrived, health problems, loss, and fatigue had changed everything. Joy doesn't have to be grand or expensive. It can be found in a morning walk, a meal with someone you love, a hobby that fills your soul. The key is to notice it and pursue it before it slips away. One financial advisor warned that many retirees run out of money before they run out of life because they never created a budget for fun. They saved diligently for decades, but never planned for what they'd actually do with their retirement. Then they find themselves with money in the bank, but no clear vision for how to spend it meaningfully. The lesson is to start integrating experiences and joy into your life now. Don't defer all pleasure until some future date. Find balance between saving responsibly and living fully. The seventh realization at 65 is about work-life balance. Every single male patient that palliative care nurse Bronnie Ware nursed deeply regretted spending so much of his life on what she called the treadmill of work existence. Not some men, all of them. They missed their children's youth. They missed their partner's companionship. They sacrificed relationships and precious moments that could never be recovered, all in the name of career advancement and financial security. This doesn't mean work is bad or that ambition is wrong. Work gives life structure, purpose, social connection. Many people find deep meaning in their careers. But there's a difference between working hard to provide for your family and working yourself into the ground chasing some arbitrary definition of success that society handed you. By 65, you see clearly that nobody on their deathbed wishes they'd spent more time at the office. Nobody wishes they'd attended more meetings, or sent more emails, or climbed higher on the corporate ladder at the expense of everything else. What they wish is that they'd been present for the people they loved, that they'd made it to the recital, the game, the family dinner, that they'd taken the vacation, said yes to adventure, chosen connection over productivity. Understanding this at 65 is valuable but bittersweet because by then, your kids are grown. Your parents might be gone. Those specific moments are lost. The power comes from understanding this at 40 or 50 or even 30 when you still have time to adjust course. When you can make different choices about how you structure your days, what you prioritize, where you invest your limited energy. You can set boundaries at work. You can say no to opportunities that would require sacrificing family time. You can choose jobs with better work-life balance, even if they pay less. These are hard choices, especially in a culture that glorifies overwork. But the testimony of people at 65 is unanimous. Choose the people you love over the job, every single time. The eighth insight is about healthcare costs and planning. Many retirees are shocked by how expensive healthcare becomes, even with Medicare. Fidelity estimates that a 65-year-old couple retiring in 2025 will need about $315,000 over their lifetimes just to cover medical expenses, not including long-term care. Even with Medicare, retirees face significant out-of-pocket costs. Premiums, copays, prescriptions, uncovered services like dental and vision. More than 1 in 5 retirees over 65 carry medical debt. The regret isn't just about the money, though that's crushing. It's about the lack of planning. Many people assume Medicare will cover everything and then discover huge gaps. Others never consider long-term care costs. If you need assisted living or nursing home care, that can run $6,000 to $10,000 per month. Very few people have saved for that possibility. They figure they'll deal with it when it happens, but by then, their options are limited. The lesson from 65 is to plan for healthcare costs specifically and generously. Use health savings accounts if you're eligible. Consider long-term care insurance, though it's expensive. Most importantly, don't assume your retirement savings are just for fun and leisure. A huge chunk will likely go to keeping you healthy and alive. The ninth lesson concerns Social Security timing. 37% of retirees say they regret claiming Social Security too early. You can start benefits as early as 62, but every year you delay increases your monthly benefit significantly up to age 70. Many people claim early because they need the money or fear they won't live long enough to benefit from waiting. But for those who do live into their 70s and 80s, that decision to claim early costs them hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetimes. The advice from those who've lived through it is to run the numbers carefully before deciding. Consider your health, your family history of longevity, your other sources of income. If you can afford to delay, it's often wise to do so because that higher monthly benefit protects you against outliving your savings. Think of delayed Social Security as insurance against a long life. But this requires having other income to live on during those years of delay, which brings us back to the importance of saving. The 10th revelation is perhaps the most profound. Multiple retirees said they regret waiting until 65 to truly like themselves. They spent decades trying to become someone worthy of love, not realizing they always were someone. They thought being difficult or demanding or opinionated meant something was wrong with them. Eventually, they understood that difficult women are simply honest women. That setting boundaries doesn't make you selfish. That saying no is a complete sentence. That you don't owe anyone a performance of perpetual pleasantness. But learning self-acceptance at 65 means decades were spent in quiet self-rejection. Decades of trying to be smaller, quieter, more accommodating, more likable. The grief of that lost time is real, and the advice from those who finally found self-acceptance late in life is clear. Start liking yourself now. You don't need to become someone different. You don't need to achieve more or lose weight or get the promotion or fix every flaw. You're already enough. Living from that place of self-acceptance transforms everything. Your relationships improve because you stop seeking validation. Your career choices align with your actual values instead of others' expectations. Your daily life feels more authentic because you're not constantly performing. What unites all these lessons is a shift in perspective that comes when you finally slow down enough to see your life clearly. At 30 or 40, you're in the thick of it. Building, achieving, striving, managing. There's barely time to think, much less reflect deeply on whether you're building the right thing. But at 65, the view changes. You can see the whole arc. You can identify what mattered and what didn't. You can trace the consequences of decisions made decades ago, and what emerges is a kind of wisdom that only comes from experience. It's easy to dismiss the regrets of retirees as Monday morning quarterbacking. Of course, they can say what they should have done differently after the fact. But that's precisely what makes their insights valuable. They've already lived through the choices you're facing. They've seen how those choices played out over time. They're offering you the cheat codes, the shortcut to understanding, before you have to learn it the hard way. The question is whether we'll listen. Human beings are remarkably bad at learning from others. We insist on making our own mistakes. We think we're different, that the patterns that applied to everyone else won't apply to us. We prioritize the urgent over the important, the immediate over the long-term, the comfortable over the meaningful. And then one day we're 65, looking back, wondering where the time went and why we spent so much of it on things that ultimately didn't matter. But it doesn't have to be that way. Right now, whatever your age, you have the opportunity to apply these lessons. You can increase your retirement savings. You can take your health seriously. You can prioritize relationships. You can live more authentically. You can choose experiences over possessions. You can set better boundaries at work. You can plan for healthcare costs. You can make thoughtful decisions about Social Security. You can start liking yourself today instead of waiting decades. These aren't radical changes. They're adjustments in priority and perspective. But over time, those adjustments compound into a completely different life trajectory. A life where you arrive at 65 without a mountain of regrets. A life where you understood what truly mattered before it was too late.